on patrol with the Salem police and her growing frustrations at not having another kid finally tore them apart. Familiar streets slipped past him as he neared the exit of the sprawling housing development. For a second, he considered turning back and telling the kids he'd take them up to the cabin after all. But he didn't. Besides, he still needed to finish packing up his things at his own place. Then, it would be done. His lawyer had called him earlier to tell him the papers were through and he was divorced. For the third time. The thought brought on an inward groan as he slowed at the stoplight. Tap, 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 tap. This light always took an eternity to turn. He reached for the radio, turning the dial once, twice, 3 times before finally landing on his favorite talk radio. Except all he got was fuzz. It felt like he just couldn't catch a break. Not that it was anything new to him. He switched off the radio with a grunt. His fingers immediately itched to tap, but he fought the urge as he stared at the stoplight. Finally, the light turned green and he opened up the throttle. His truck belched out a cloud of black smoke, letting him know he needed to stop at the auto parts store. He was overdue for an oil change. Ever since his world collapsed that afternoon 2 years ago, so many things had piled up. The reminder of his injury had him moving his left hand to his leg, massaging the puckered scar through his jeans. Leaving West Salem behind, he merged onto Highway 22. Sleet hit his windshield as he crossed the bridge. Without the distraction of the radio, his mind wandered to the 1,000,001 things he needed to do in town. Then, tomorrow, he'd head to the cabin alone. Now that he wouldn't have the kids, 7 whole days of solitude stretched ahead of him. A wave of guilt shot through him. Though, at least it would give him time to fix the deck stairs that had sagged and paint the front room. Screeching tires pulled him from his thoughts. He looked about, watching as the large Escalade next to him smashed into the car in front, which had come to a standstill. Slamming on the brakes, he just barely navigated his truck to the side of the road. Ice must have already started forming because several other cars collided, pushing one another down the hill and into the intersection at the bottom. Turning the truck off, he grabbed his keys and jumped out into the chilly afternoon. People were piling out of their vehicles. Everyone had the same dazed looks on their faces, their eyes darting about. His fingers tapped his hip where his gun should have been, before moving to his shoulder to feel for his missing badge. Old habits he couldn't break. He ran toward a crushed Subaru that had smashed into the back of a bright yellow camper van. He peered into the windows at the 50-something woman behind the wheel. She had a gash on her forehead that spewed blood down her face, staining her once white cashmere scarf a bright pink, though otherwise she seemed unhurt. Still, he knocked on her window. She fumbled for a moment before cracking the door. "Are you okay, ma'am?" She blinked up at him, clearly disoriented. Her eyes didn't focus despite staring straight at him. He worried she was suffering from a concussion. He reached for his phone, dialing 911 without glancing, before holding it to his ear. Silence greeted him, which brought on a frown. His free hand tapped against his leg. He let out a gruff sigh at the sight of the 0 bars in the upper corner of the phone screen. Turning toward the hills of West Salem, he took in the gunmetal gray clouds that were rolling in. The towers must have been knocked out. Thanks to the weather, every instinct from decades on the police force was itching to kick in. Tap, 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 tap. But he wasn't a police officer anymore. He was a mere civilian. The thought was unwelcome as he turned back to the woman, her eyes still glassy as she stared back at him. Her gaze slipped past him. Pure terror widened her eyes as her mouth dropped open. Instinctively, he swung round, right hand automatically moving to his empty hip. A curse escaped him as screams filled the air. Careening toward the bridge and the steep incline into Salem's streets below was a shiny log truck. Pat would have bet his last dollar this was the driver's first load of large trees. The truck was too shiny and out of place as it barreled down the highway. Ice already forming on the bridge helped